Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. But it's all there. Mitch, I know we are looking for a working title, but
Yeah,
we
you need
cannot
a good one this week, Darnell. You need a good one this week.
we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater. The rotting fish stinks at the head. We can't
Uh,
do that.
I
You might
can't
turn
hear.
off some rotting fish.
I don't hear a song coming out of that, but maybe we'll work at it. I agree with you. It may
I
not
don't
be.
know. Big Fish was a musical, but I don't know any songs from it right off the bat.
Well, that leads us
Um,
right to that. Yes, it does. Right?
yes. Welcome to the Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnell Radford,
I'm Mitch Weiss.
and let's get down to business. Um,
Yay.
a lot of things happen. There's a couple of things we want to focus more on, but one of the things I wanted to talk about is Patti LuPone.
Yay, Patty.
Patti LuPone gave up her equity card,
Yeah, she
saying she
says
just
she's not
didn't.
planning to work. You know what is the most interesting part of that to me is as part of her statement, her initial statement, she said, "And I have nothing else to say on it, so don't ask." Meanwhile, right
So she
after
said,
that, she starts tweeting and emailing and talking to the press. Um, as somebody who used to do press for a number of both shows and music groups, as they say, all press is good. And
yeah,
she's used this to the hilt. So whether she had a good reason or not, and we can talk about equity. There are many things about it that need, what's the word, growing up, shall I say? I mean, she called them a mess. They're
yeah.
um, they're not being helpful to, in
Mm.
my opinion, to either their members or the theatrical community at the moment. But mostly because I think they lost all their experienced people.
That's what I was going to ask, and this ties into what we'll talk about, moving a little later. Um, I was wondering if some of this is because of turnover, because a lot of organizations have had a lot of turnover, and I'm only getting, I don't know, like 100 emails a day. I can imagine how many
Right.
everyone with an Actors Equity email address is getting a day. You know, so I I can totally see just being overwhelmed by whatever random question was being asked.
Let's
Uh,
start with
you
though,
know,
because I've had dealings with him just this week, and
mhm.
let's be honest. Today, some of my best friends are Actors Equity Association staff previously, so that's my joke.
That sounds like a
But right,
that sounds like a statement that racist people
yes,
say.
thank you. Exactly,
Some
that's
of
my
my
joke.
best friends
It's
are
because I'm
of
about to blast them. So I have to have to start being nice. And I've never had any problem with them. With my past dealings on Broadway, off Broadway, um, I found them to be very human, and they listen. They have in the past worked with you. They have a lot of rules, but
Mhm.
so does every union. So
Yeah.
what happened this week is I had a question about some project I'm working on in the future. So I called them, and there is no receptionist. There is no one that answers the phone. So now you have, of course, your digital press one if you're looking for, press two if you're looking for. They only have three or four choices. One of them is membership, which is for the performers if they want to ask a question. One's for the pension and health, again for the members. And the other is you have to know the name of the person you want to speak to. However, the staff has turned over during the pandemic. So now it's not by category, like I want to talk to them about showcases, or I want to talk to them about set, or I want to talk to them about a production contract. There's no one to reach.
Hmm.
So now you have to go to the wrong person, hope that they get back to you, that everyone's working from home, which that's fine. And they do call you back, right? Somebody calls you back, but they usually say, oh, my experience. Interesting question. I'm not the one to answer that. Let me see if I can figure out who I can send you to. That is not
Hmm.
what you want to hear from a union when you're going to pay their members for a job and you're trying to reach out to make a project happen. And then they often send you to the wrong person who has to add somebody to the phone conversation because you have a two-part question. That
Yeah.
never happened before. Never.
So Equity's website mentions that they represent more than 51,000 professional actors and stage managers nationwide.
With another 100,000 who want to join.
But then if you go to their contact us page, they've got 4 locations.
Yes.
So you think that's enough for all
Well,
51,000?
most of them are in New York.
And they're all, yeah, everyone's
I think
calling New
I
York
think the
on this,
number,
right?
and forgive me, I'm going to be off by a few thousand. I think 38,000 of them live in New York City. So we're not. This is the hub. They have Chicago, they have Los Angeles, and one other place which I just forgot. And Chicago and Los Angeles are definite hubs. So
Orlando.
you're right. Oh, Orlando, a la Disney, obviously. Um, the the trick, of course, to all of this isn't that you can't. Oh, by the way, the first person I reached at Equity was in LA, and I had a New York question. So now we still had to find someone.
Mm.
Um, yeah, membership dues went down during the pandemic, but Broadway came back pretty fast, and tons and tons of people want to join because that's how they get jobs, and they're noted for being very supportive. And everybody wants health care, and that you get through a union. Pension and health care is the base minimum pay allowed are the 3 main purposes of any union. Beyond that, it's just for extra stuff. Now, the thing that Equity has is they got very complicated. They have something like, I don't know, 40 different types of contracts, depending on the size of your audience, how much you charge, how much you can afford, what part of the country you're in, blah, blah, blah. If you're, starting a new show, if you have a show that's going to have a paid audience versus one that isn't, if you're going to videotape it for your own purposes, everything has a different price. And that's complicated. And if you can't ask a question of a human being, and if you're not a trained manager belonging to APAM, you don't have a chance in hell.
Mm.
So many of the people I've spoken to, not in the union, say, we're just going to ignore them. It's easier to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, than it is to try to figure out what I'm supposed to do in the first place. That is not the way a union should be encouraging producers to act.
Yeah.
So they're a mess. So that's, I think, Patty, I'm sure, had her own example. But, she's had a career. She knows what she needs from a union. And maybe she's expecting too much. I think that may be the case. When there's a complaint backstage, the union's supposed to jump in. If there's sexual harassment, the union's supposed to jump in. These are all new things. This never used to be the job that a union had to deal with.
Yeah.
Right? So, anyway, we move on. But it's true of a lot of the unions. Not all of them, but a lot of them. They've
Yeah.
become overwhelmed during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can resonate with that. So one thing that's interesting.
Wait a minute. You don't have a song to finish up what I just said? Come on,
No,
don't.
I was gonna sing a few bars from Move On.
There you
Uh,
go. Yeah, I know. I was going crazy on that. I apologize for just doing a long speech.
yeah, no, that's okay. I so what I was thinking is that so we've been having conversations for longer than we've produced a podcast, and part of the reason it took us so long um, to get to our first season, which this episode is our 25th episode, is that um I wasn't sure if I wanted like a pandemic edition.
Understand.
And here we are 25 episodes later and we are still very much feeling the residuals of COVID. COVID is the guest that won't leave. One we all hate.
Yeah, and some people, I was on an elevator today, and one elderly gentleman who I don't know well waited for two other people to get off the elevator, then turned to me and say, "I can't stand my mask," and he pulled it down while I'm still in the elevator.
Mm.
And acting like I was fine with it. And he started chatting to me. I barely know this guy. you know,
He's
um,
like, "You
people,
new here?
they're just
No, I'm not
crazy.
new."
They're all just crazy. That's something we all have to understand. Audiences are absolutely crazy. Patty LuPone
Yeah.
has a lot to say about that too.
Yes. Yeah. I couldn't tell if this was an exact quote from Patty, but the article said that Broadway has dumbed down the audience by turning it into Disneyland.
That is an unfortunate say. Yeah, that is a quote I saw too.
Mhm.
I would disagree with her unless she wants to go back a long way.
Mm.
There are some things Disney has done to Broadway. The first one, which was my first complaint, Broadway, up until the day that Disney opened a show on Broadway, had a rule: no one under 4 admitted to the theater.
Mm.
The idea was we have an adult art form, and it's live. You don't want a screaming baby. I don't know why 5 was the age in which they thought everything was fine, but that was it. And Disney came in and they dropped that rule. They were the only one to drop it, and they said, our audience comes from Disney World. How do we explain to them that when they're allowed to do and bring whoever they want to our entertainment facility, that once they come to Broadway, they can't? So they allowed everyone in. And by the way, in the orchestra, in the prime seats, there were people breastfeeding.
Wow.
The only requirement, which the box office was told, is I don't care what the age of the person is, they must buy a full price ticket. That's all Disney cared about. And at that point, it became competition. The other shows are going, I know a chorus line isn't the worst thing for children to see, but hey, we got to compete. Phantom of the Opera, it may bore the hell out of a 3-year-old, but if they're willing to buy the ticket, who are we? And that rule went away because of Disney.
When you said that, it made me think of in the late 90s when McDonald's realized that their fan base, their customers had grown up
Mm.
and now they don't buy Happy Meals, so they came out with the Arch Deluxe
uh,
and uh all those deluxe sandwiches that were supposed to be like the adults, you
mhm.
know, the adult meals like a Big Mac was for a kid apparently.
Amazing. Uh,
Just
you know,
crazy.
yeah. Well, and so the question, I'm sure, Patty, and it's going to be her experience. She's going to be thinking that you want your audience to appreciate serious theater, and perhaps when they feel like it's Disney World, some people come in,
Hmm.
perhaps, I haven't particularly noticed it, thinking they can, chat, they can talk. I think cell phones had more to do with her problem than Disney. I think it's just very hard to tell people who are used to videotaping and recording that they're not allowed.
They can't. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how you train people. There was one show on Broadway um, that because there was nudity in it, they had to hire extra people, and they took everyone's phone before they got into the theater, bagged them, gave them a coat check, and they were liable for returning that phone at the end of the show. They just said our actors will not go on if they think they're going to be videotaped because they are naked.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of kickback, and people still snuck a phone in there and still did it.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah, and just like the issue would Take Me Out.
well, yeah, that was one of two shows that did it. And it's a great expense and trouble to ask your house staff that's already working so hard to now have to be policemen. So
Hmm.
that I'm guessing all of this is what she's feeling. Uh, I'm sure if she wanted to be on Broadway, she would. And she can always come back into the union. No big deal.
It's interesting, and I kind of wonder this. I don't have enough. I don't have enough experience to really speak to it, but it would be an interesting thing. Because I've only seen a few operas over the years.
Hmm.
But I always wonder, like, is their audience having the same issue?
And the answer would be they are beginning to have it. It's
Mm,
rare. Part of the reason is how expensive their tickets are,
mhm.
and that but as they find that they need a new, younger audience to fill the seats that were previously held by older people,
Yeah,
they are discovering a similar problem.
yeah,
So, I'm aware of cases. The only trick to that is since an opera, at least in the major houses, will happen once or twice in a row and then go away, that recording it is not the end of the world.
true.
Theater, and I'm not sure videotaping theater is the end of the world either, except it looks pretty lousy on a phone in the dark.
Here's what's kind of interesting. Um, when movie theaters, when it became more commonplace for a movie theater to have reserved seating, I feel like the experience of going to a movie got better.
Hmm.
There's something about there's something about paying for that ticket and choosing your seat, and that's different. And now we have theaters where, um, like AMC has dine-in theaters where you can actually place an order and have it brought right to your seat. And it does seem like it is a much better experience because all of those things that would make you antsy are now sort of conveniences. You can order food and have it brought to you. You can reserve a seat, and the seat is comfortable.
Well,
That's the other thing,
that has a lot to do with it.
the
I,
comfortable seat. So I wonder, yes,
less the food. Feed me, Audrey. Um,
yes,
it's dinner theater has happened before, and
feed me, Seymour.
we go through cycles. Sometimes dinner theater is a big deal, although most of them have now shuttered because the pandemic killed them. Also,
Yeah.
I think there is less. You'll excuse the phrase, less appetite for them. Sorry, and but they'll come back.
We
Uh,
still have a dinner. Well,
the
there.
problem though with bringing food in. is the noise. And what always drives me crazy is when the Broadway theaters, they have candy available for like $400 for a box of goobers,
Mm.
but they make so much noise during the show, and I'm thinking, just pick the candies that don't make noise. Why would you sell something that makes noise? And that's been forever. But of course, I'm not a rich theater owner, so I don't get to say that. Um, but the seats, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
110%. Here's a great story we just read about this week. Um, Basketball player. Uh, which one? I want to get him right. This is one of our retired heroes. He went to see a show. They know how tall he is. They
Hmm.
took the seat in front of his out so he could stretch his legs. They wouldn't do that for anybody else. There have been people who are weighing 350 pounds who pay a full price ticket. They don't say, oh, we're going to take the armrest down so you can spread out. Theater is turned into the airlines. Pack them in.
It
Don't
was
care about comfort. What don't
Magic
have?
Johnson.
Oh, was it Magic Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen. I'm sorry. He should have been forced to let them be embarrassed because the rest of us need some leg room also. And while the newer theaters have more leg room on Broadway, I will say that
Well,
the older ones do not. They pack them in, and it's embarrassing because it's just
it, w-
greed.
it was the opening night of the piano lesson,
So
and Magic Johnson is 6'9".
he's what?
He's 6'9".
Yeah, I understand that. Oh, listen, I'm in favor of having a seat for him, but I'm also in favor of having a seat for someone who isn't famous.
Oh,
Who
yes.
that's that. My point is, yes, we need more options. It took a law to get a handicap location in every theater. So finally, if someone shows up in a wheelchair or in crutches, they have special seats at special prices for these people already built into the theater. Why shouldn't we have that for tall people, for heavy people, for short people who can't see over the head of the person behind them?
People that climb on rocks.
You're having fun. I'm angry. Can you tell?
I know. Yes, yes, we should. We if we're gonna make those exceptions, we should make them for everyone.
Yeah,
But then
and there should be availability.
the argument is, but the cost of tickets would go up, but the cost of tickets has already gone up, and
It's
for that
already out,
price,
right, and it's outrageous and
yeah,
has nothing to do with the number
yeah,
of seats. They add the seats to make more money, not to break even.
mm,
This is pure greed. It always has been. There's a particular theater on Broadway that had tight seats to begin with. There were embarrassing situations with heavy celebrities. We had to clear the theater, and four ushers had to help one actor out of his seat after seeing a show because they were so tight. And then 3 months later, they added 2 rows of seats. They made them even smaller. And the theater was having no trouble making money with the show they had.
wow,
It is wrong. But again, the theater owners are not the producers of the shows. So it's not, do we want to make people feel comfortable? It's, I've rented this theater. They make the decisions. All we're doing is putting the show on the stage. The theater owner just makes all those rules. It's
mm,
which now we talk about nonprofit and smaller theaters in places. They have the ability to be comfortable. They can make their seats wider. They can, have leg room. They can help their customers and their subscribers if they have special needs. Broadway is just stuff them in.
yeah. But for some reason, the mindset of paying more for a regional theater ticket, uh, doesn't fly as well as it does on Broadway. I mean, when you think about seeing a show on Broadway, let's say you're not driving into the city, you're taking the train. Let's just say you're going to treat yourself. You booked Amtrak a month in advance so you can get your discount. Um, so that you don't have to worry about parking. You got there early, which means you definitely have to nosh. So you want to eat on something before the show. And then you get to the theater, you're definitely buying something because you can't leave and the world not know that you were here. Like the program's not enough. You have to buy something. So you might just
You're
say,
too
I'm
much a
just going to get a
consumer.
magnet.
Too much a consumer.
I'm just going to get a magnet. But then you get a t-shirt and then you get a hat. Now you have a tote bag because when you go grocery shopping, you have to let everybody know that you saw the show. Uh, you know, but then for regional theater, it's like, you just come in, you sit down, you see the show. We try to coax you into a talkback discussion after the show. You don't have time for that. You will leave
so here's
and
my
not stay
so
for the
here's my
talk.
question to you, and you and I, as people working in the theater, we are not the typical audience,
Hmm.
so we have to acknowledge that.
I know we're just elevated. That's
What
who
would
we are.
make you or me willing to pay a Broadway price for a show in a regional theater?
Well, what would make me comfortable paying that kind of price for a regional theater production is if my regionally located job paid adequately.
Interesting. I would not see even on Broadway. I look for the discount. I'm willing to see as much as I can. Um, I
Yeah,
I
but that
just
is because we're insiders. We
well
do
yeah
find those
absolutely
ways. Like I don't think I've ever paid full price for a Broadway show.
no,
Um,
but there are people who pay. There was a they're still paying over $1,000 for tickets to Music Man and Hamilton, and no, this is not money at the box office. These are to brokers who claim they've got seats that they can't buy, that the
mm,
person can't buy at the box office, and people are willing to do it. And I'm going, well, if these particular people are willing to do it on Broadway, what would make them say, I'm also willing to do this in Boston or Philadelphia or DC?
well, I think in that case, it has to be about the production. When it comes to a regional theater, there's so much we're trying to tell you about. You know, you came for our premiere.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a local premiere or a world premiere, you came for the show. But also, we're trying to tell you about our education initiative. We're also trying to tell you about our sweepstakes, or whatever we call it. We're also trying to tell you about how you can be a part of this elite group of people who just sit in the same seats that you sit in.
What you're saying is you're
Once
begging them to come to your theater.
Well, we're asking them to prop up the infrastructure
You're
that
begging. It's called
yeah.
begging. That's
Yeah.
what nonprofits do. And if I had the answer to how they wouldn't have
Oh,
to do
yes,
that,
we would call it a beg letter.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, the appeal
So
the appeal
So
is
what you've got is you've got a regional theater doing a show that costs them as much as it might in relative terms, of course,
mhm,
much as it would cost a Broadway show, and especially since they're not going to run it forever because regional theaters don't do that. But Broadway, if you have a hit, can run forever.
mm.
So now you're talking about we need just as much money per ticket. We have less seats and we're trying to put on a quality show, and we're only running for X number of weeks, and we have to beg the audience not only to come, but we have to beg them to give us more money than the price of the ticket, which means the ticket wasn't enough. So why isn't the ticket enough? Why should it not be? And of course, these are hypothetical questions, Darnell.
Yeah.
If I had the answers, but technically, if a show cost $150 a seat to break even in the 8 weeks or 6 weeks that a show is running in a theater, and you only have 100 seats or 200 seats or whatever you've got there, and you need that money, why are you charging $30? Because you're going to have to find the money somewhere else. There's an answer to why. I mean, because your audience won't pay more, they don't know what they're coming to see.
True.
Right? If you had Hugh Jackman starring in your show and it's the Music Man with 40 people in the cast and a giant set on your little stage, I bet you could get the same money they got on Broadway. Regional theaters don't do that.
It is interesting how on Broadway, it's more about the names on the stage and not the producer, like who's producing the show. But in the regional market, it may be more about who's producing the show.
Right.
And possibly that is because, for the most part, we have, we are guided by a mission statement. Like we produce a type of theater, so that when you come to our theater, this is what you can expect versus like, um, you know, someone who wants to see Hugh Jackman in The Music Man isn't really thinking about the fact that it's in the Winter Garden Theater. You
Correct.
know, they just want to see Hugh Jackman,
Well,
and
and
it's
they
not
want to
even
see
about
Broadway. It's a
in Broadway.
and
Yeah,
Broadway. But if you
yeah.
live in Boston, or better yet, let's use your town, Philly. You live in Philly and you want to see theater, and
Mhm.
you believe that some of the theaters that you know about produce good shows. They're just originals or smaller shows, but they're quality.
Mhm.
The question always becomes, how do you get someone coming home from work to get out of their house and go to the theater? Broadway, because it's aimed after tourists, now, it didn't always, but it is. Um, they've got their own marketing plan. Regional theaters, they don't band together. They don't say, we're the place where the shows that may go to Broadway are going to get their start. We're
Mm.
the place that you are supporting because you're going to be part of our family and be part of the creation of theater, which is more than sitting in a seat eating popcorn or
Yeah.
goobers or whatever it is. There's very little going on, and that's because
No
we're
caps.
in suburban feeling of a community. People come home from work, they're tired.
Mhm.
And that's true in New
Well,
York too.
I think that's well, especially now with COVID restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there isn't concessions for many theaters. So now you're rushing to get home from work to go to a show that has a limited engagement, and so you're doing the math. You're like, if I'm going to get there on time, I think I have to drive, which means I'm going to have to park. Then I'll have to pay to park. Um, whereas like if you're going to New York, like that is a destination. You're taking a trip, so it's a simple. I mean, there are people who live closer to New York and in New York who can maybe just roll over and
Right.
end up at the Hirschfield. But um,
By the way, we statistically we've discovered that there's up to 3 months of an audience living within commuter distance of New
mm,
York that would possibly see a Broadway show. If you want a
mm,
long run, you have to rely on tourists.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and then it's kind of overwhelming in the regional market. Let's say, for instance, you live in South Philadelphia. Theater Exile is a South Philly theater. Technically, we are your theater. However, um, our mission may not be your cup of tea.
That's
So you have to think about another theater that is more up your alley. Let's say you're more about comedies, and so you want to experience like an 1812
mhm.
productions or something. And I think here it's more than just what's on the stage. It's the genre. Like, what are we interested in?
I think that
I
for
don't know.
some people that may be true.
I know,
Their
but
audience
sometimes
isn't a monolith.
that's true. That's true. But when you think about a subscription, you know, you might subscribe to a certain type of theater because of the type of theater they produce, or you might just subscribe to one just so that you have options there. There's many reasons why you do, but you can't subscribe to 50 of them,
Well, there
and
and
you
yeah,
can't, you
you
know.
can't. The other problem with that, though, for example, I know business wise, I have no idea where I'm going to be in March. How
Mhm.
can I commit myself to seeing a show and pay for it in advance, even though I'm getting a discount? I
Well,
would prefer. I'd
this
pre-
is how I feel that people feel right now.
yes, yeah,
It's like, what if I book this ticket and I end up somewhere and boom, now I have COVID.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
yeah. So I feel like we need to be. We're so grateful for our subscribers now
Yeah, but
because.
I've noticed Exile has a very flexible policy about that. Certainly, if
Mhm.
somebody needed to change a date, you're to the best of your ability. I mean, if you have it,
Yeah.
sold out house, nothing you can do. But for the most part, if somebody had a reason, you'd be able to switch tickets. So
Yes,
that
but I could also see how a flex subscription basically says, or you could just buy a single ticket.
right,
It's not a lock-in like it was once before. It's now trying to be more convenient. And yes, there is a value in that, but I could see an audience saying like, why am I going to subscribe when technically the flexibility that you're offering me, I would have if I decided to come see the show or not.
and along that way, if certainly in the winter months it becomes weather can play an issue.
Hmm.
Sometimes you're just tired.
Oh yeah.
So,
If you ride a bike and it's raining,
mhm,
I'm probably not going to the
right.
show.
So the other thing is, until a particular theater is selling out, if you have a show that somebody says, "Oh my God, this is the best thing since peanut butter and jelly," someone may be willing to go out of their way to see that show and pick a date and even spend a little more.
Mm.
But that kind of reputation, it still comes down to, and this happened to me the other day. I went to a theater company who I admire. I do not have a subscription. I just bought a single ticket for a preview. It was, on sale, and I do admire their work. It was one of the most torturous evenings of theater I have sat through in my adult life. And I sat through it, and I even brought a guest. Now, what do I do at that point? And how do I don't want to hurt the theater, but I'm going to warn my friends. They should not take a chance on that show, which now means this theater, as their first show of the season, they're going to be in the hole if people are following my judgment, of course. We don't know about that. But why would, to me, it's like if a theater had the ability to say, you know what, this show didn't work out the way we thought, we're shutting it down now, and we're going to give you a different show instead, that would be a great thing. But theaters don't do that. They pick a time because, again, people are being hired as actors and on and on. But not every show needs to be seen. you know, it's
Phone
great that
rings,
the
door chimes, in comes equity. Equity is like, wait a minute,
yeah.
wait a minute. You made a promise. You paid a
Well,
bond.
here's the trick: you are allowed to shut the show down. You just have to
That's
pay everyone for the amount of time. Well, usually 2 weeks. You can shut it
yeah.
down early, but you have to pay them for 2 more weeks. That has
But
to
if you're
be built
yes,
into which one's worse. Letting our audience see a show that may keep them from ever coming back to us, or
well,
paying 2 weeks of salary.
I feel like some would panic and figure that they could put band-aids on the show, you know, um, by squeezing in maybe some extra rehearsals or something. Like, but
Or
if the piece itself is was not ready for prime time,
mhm.
and they didn't know that until they got to previews. Hmm.
Well, and here's make it even worse. Well, not worse. The other notion, and I know you've brought this up a number of times, um, you need audiences, and we do know that audiences have not come back in full pre-pandemic mode. There are still many hesitant people,
Yeah.
and they have other things on their mind. It's not just I don't want to see theater,
Mhm.
but make the tickets free, pay what you can.
Yeah, we do have a lot of. There are a few companies here in Philadelphia who have a pay what you decide model, and it would be interesting to know how that works for them, um, because there is sort of a mindset that if you've gone to the show and and you've experienced that, you have to give something, like you would give something
Right.
because you've been engaged, you've been entertained, you've had an experience, so you'll put something in an envelope at the end. But but
Church
uh,
works that way.
he
They pass the
yeah,
basket.
he passed the basket. I know, but that's sort of a guilt trip, though, because aren't
Aha!
you required?
Our theater will shut down if you don't give us some money. That's a guilt
But
trip.
aren't you required to contribute 10% to a church that
It
you go
depends which
to?
church. It
Something
depends.
like that. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't go to
No,
church.
I don't think most churches have that requirement, but people know
Yeah.
what's expected,
Yeah.
and that can still be for a theater that's offering all of its shows for free, and saying, but
Well,
I'm not pushing for it. I'm just
oh
use.
no, 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 no. I was gonna ask, to both of us. So if this was not our business,
Mhm.
would we break for theater the way we do?
Um,
And if you're
hmm.
not in the business, like who are the people who are looking for, you know what, I'm just committed to going to theater, or like a couple of nights a week if I can. I'm just gonna give myself to an experience and figure it out. Like,
You know,
for me,
it's a great question. I think you asked the right question, and
yeah.
I would I would propose to you that many times, I'm not going to go past that description, many times people are more entranced by the process of creating theater, being part of it, which is why they're all willing to work for free when they're young. I just want to be part of the process of theater. I love it so much, the creation, the collaboration, and they are
Mhm.
less interested in being in the audience. That when they go to theater, these same people are imagining themselves putting that show on, what it would take, what it would feel like to be backstage working on it to create the joy or the drama that they are feeling watching the show. Which is why I think nonprofits have lost their way. I think it is as much a family situation. The more you make people think, and this is a theory, I have no proof of this, okay, pure theory. The more you make people think they are part of the creation and the stability of a particular theater, the more they want to see your shows and be there. That's a
Hmm.
hard thing to do, but I don't know of too many theaters. I do know of a couple that are doing it. I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad one. The other thing is to have high quality shows at all times. Impress the hell out of people. That would bring me in. If I know, like I said, I went to this theater company last week to see their first show of the season, and it was god awful. The set was awful. The actors were wonderful. Nothing wrong with the actors, but they were working on a script that needed not to have happened. And it was 2 hours and 10 minutes with no intermission in a drama. I was in torture. I said, there's got to be something at the end of this play to make it worthwhile. And there wasn't. There were good moments, but I spent more time in my imagination than I did watching that show. So yeah, you know what? And then they start advertising their second show, and it has a completely different playwright, completely different. I'm not buying a ticket. I'm going to wait and read the reviews.
Hmm.
It makes that much of a difference to me. I don't like being bored, and I know plenty of people fall asleep during the Music Man in the second row because they're so tired from work, and their spouse made them come. So
Yeah.
there are all kinds
Yeah.
of audiences.
Well, let's touch on promotion just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because so for instance, I follow Into the Woods on social media. I follow them on Instagram, but I'm not like mainlining every post that they put out. Um, however, I think about other shows and I'm like, am I following them? And do I care what they have to say on social media?
Hmm.
You know, it's like if I only want to see if I've seen their show once, I don't need to continue to engage in this conversation.
And why do you?
Well, um, what's interesting about Into the Woods, for example, is that this cast changes. So some people leave, some people come back. So,
What does that have to do with the blessings of your life?
oh no, I'm just saying the reason their social media is worth following is because something might change.
And how does that affect
And
you? You're not going to see them. You've
but
seen
you
the
might.
show. Well, you
I
may,
don't know.
but
If Heather Headley comes back to Into the Woods, we will be there if we can get
okay,
tickets.
that's a valid reason. To me, there isn't an actor in the world that would make me say that's the reason I'm going.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
To
Mhm.
me, it doesn't mean I'm not happy when I see certain people perform. I will unfortunately go sometimes when a friend is in the cast or has just entered. For example, I am seeing something this weekend that I don't want to see. It's a good show, so I'm not going to be bored, but I'm only seeing it because my friend is in it. But at least it's a good show.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, I don't know how to answer. You are more social media involved than I am. I do read promotional newsletter. I mean, I get some of that information, so I don't want to say I don't follow it. But if a new cast goes in, things like Broadway Briefing announce there's a
Mhm.
new cast. I go, oh, nice to know. I don't have to follow them.
Yeah.
You know,
I will say that Broadway Briefing is probably one of the emails I look forward to.
yeah, me too.
It's information. That's it. It's not trying to be anything else. It's like, hey, here's some information that you might want to know about the business.
Insider information, and anyone can. They may not be that interested in some of these little details, but they are
Yeah.
for industry. The newsletters for industry insiders. It is free, although they do have a paid version where you get a little bit more of the financial data. But it's just
Mhm.
BroadwayBriefing.com. So I have no problem advertising it. My friend Matt created it.
Mm.
So impressive. Out of nowhere, he had no idea whether this would catch on. And now it's this big deal that everyone in the industry follows. So,
Yeah.
give him a lot of
What
credit.
was what were we following before that? I guess it was Playbill and like
On
you'd have to go
the New
you'd have to
York
go to the drama
Times,
bookshop and buy Theater Index.
yeah, Broadway World, Broadway.com, New York Times would have, sometimes they'd have listings. Um, there wasn't the inside part of the industry wasn't that available to a lot of other people.
Mm.
I would bump into a friend on the street. They would tell me, right? Because they know that. But other than that, we didn't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like it. It's so interesting. Uh, we're not sponsored by Broadway Briefing in any way. We're
No,
not
no connection
promoting
at
them,
all.
but the thing that is interesting is they do have a website, but all you can do on that website is subscribe to their
Yeah,
mailing list
there's nothing else going on. By the way,
unless you want to
the other
advertise.
thing, and you were talking about marketing in general, and this is my personal belief because I'm an old fogey who worked in theater in the days before the internet.
Mhm.
Um, I found that the most effective marketing when other than paying for a big full page ad in the Sunday New York Times and spending a fortune, other than that, it came from newsletters or letters, direct mail, or things that you could just pick up in a lobby. Every week it changed. You knew you can go back to the lobby or something else was coming. And in it, there would be a new angle on something that was going on. Like you said, a cast change, things that no one may care about. But that meant that every week, the theater was making you think about them. You were still
Yeah.
in their mind. And that's the hardest part because advertising costs a fortune. So now you have to think of marketing promotion and how do you reach a public that generally doesn't care? You have to make it interesting. That's what press
Mm.
agents do. They invent things to make things look interesting. It's a great profession, but it's exhausting. You
Yeah.
know, I think I told you this. I've invented column items that the people in my column item that I sent out had
Mhm.
no knowledge of. I asked their permission, but I literally would create, the mayor of New York talked to this actor on Thursday when they met in this restaurant by accident, and this is the joke he told. And the joke would somehow relate to the show he was in, but I made it up, totally made up. And it was word for word in the column the next day. So that's what this page 6 stuff. It's just made up. But how do you compete with that? You've got Theater Exile. How does Theater Exile compete? And that is a really big question. Because it deserves a good rep that it has. So that's not the problem. You're putting on good shows and have in the past. How do you convince an audience that you're more important than them staying home and watching TV that night?
Yeah, that's very true. And some of the conversations that I've had, you know, are about okay, so who is on our mailing list and who is actively engaged in our mailing list?
Mhm.
They are the people that we are in business for. Like we're supporting, I mean, we're there for them because they are connected to us. And so I guess in a way
And
we
can you
don't feel
get
like
them to bring you more people?
exactly. And or can we just get them to get out from in front of their
Right.
TV and come see a show? And yeah, so that is kind of the challenge, and it's partially because of many things. So, like for instance, at the beginning of the pandemic, uh, you know, whether you are a hardcore video gamer or just like a occasional video gamer, there were a handful of games that everyone was playing who had a gaming
Right.
console,
Right.
like Animal Crossing. If you were on Nintendo Switch, for example, like everyone was playing that. So it was just like, if you were playing that, it's like I could build this island and engage with all of the characters who end up on my island and not have to worry about what's going on outside.
Mm-hmm.
And if I put this down, am I still thinking about, because the Switch is portable,
Right.
like you can take it with you.
Right.
So it's like, I don't know. I mean, for instance, like in my downtime, I build cities. There's a game that I play that is you're literally building cities. And like getting down to the minutia of like, I don't know, do I want a 2 lane or do I want a 4 lane? Do I want it just one direction or
And
both
I
directions?
question whether or not that's a waste of your talents. Uh,
I don't know if it's a waste of
oh,
my talent.
if it's longer than a week's worth of play, I think it's a
I
waste.
think I think seeing that the decisions that you make, how they affect this fictitious city that you've built, makes you think more globally about things.
If you
I
then
would like.
go out and use what you were thinking about in the real world, that's where the
No, that's very
difference
true.
is. If you
Very true.
keep it to yourself, see, and I believe, gaming notwithstanding, I'm not trying to knock that down. There are many
Mhm.
things that I enjoy doing that are solo things or, a couple of people that no problem with any of that. It's then what do you do with it? And the thing that
Yeah,
gives me the most joy is working on a project with other people that leads to a show. That's why
true.
I am that involved in it as often as I can. It is that process that excites me to no end, mostly because I've seen results, both flops, but the hits. Oh my God, what joy! You have all these
Well, the
people on a high.
the reason the reason I brought up the games is because the games, much like movies and any other kind of entertainment, that you can have in the comforts of your home, these are escapes. These
Hmm.
allow you to say, my workday was, you know, hectic, or there was a lot going on, and this is how I can unwind. So, what we're trying to say is that your workday was a lot, so rush across town through traffic and come
So
see,
give
come see
so
our
give
show
them
with you.
more reason. This is something that opening nights on Broadway, when they're done correctly, and this isn't always done. We bring out the Klieg lights. We red carpet the sidewalk.
Mhm.
You
It
have the
becomes
media everywhere, and
a
then you go to a party afterward. Can you imagine if I'm coming to Theater Exile and I know when I get there that a half an hour before I'm going to be mingling with whatever situation or before it isn't as important, but when it's over, there's going to be 15 minutes of hanging out with the cast over champagne every night. That I
Mm.
know that that's a part of it, or if I know that intermission, if there is one, I'm getting a free mug. Or, I mean, premiums, whether it's an experience or whether it's a thing. When you're trying, again, we're begging people to experience us. Hopefully,
Mhm.
they walk out of there going, "That was the best time I had. I'm so glad I did it." But first, you got to get them in the seat.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? So you have to bribe them, in my opinion. If
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why that's why if you see a show later in the run and the program is no longer in color, it's in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's not a keepsake anymore. It's just like the only thing I could take away from this was the program because
Right.
you're not besides the experience. Of course, we're here for the experience, but let's be honest. There you need a takeaway.
No,
You need a takeaway.
it's
And
a
now
wonderful
with
thing you said. I agree.
yeah. And now with the pandemic, there there are some are doing some have been creative about opening nights.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen little bento boxes with like everything they would have had,
Well,
the
you go to
crudité.
opening nights there. I'm talking about every performance.
Oh yeah, for every
For every
absolutely.
performance.
And then that becomes an expense that honestly the theater is not
Dinner theater, we come
thinking
back to
about.
that. I don't. I'm not in favor of dinner theater, but you put a package together. There's something there. Maybe you have to charge more, but it becomes
Mhm.
an experience that people want, and theater becomes a
Yeah.
piece of it. And
Yeah.
then they get used to coming to your theater, and then you may not need that to convince them to come. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Maybe that becomes part of um, your branding, that you're the only theater that's doing X, X, and X, and I like going there better, and I'm willing to pay $5 or $10 more because I'm getting a full night. Maybe I don't go home from work. You say, "Hey, come straight from work. Come
Mhm.
straight from work."
Sometimes it's a simple thing.
Yeah.
Like if you come to an opening night, some theaters will have, uh, the program will have an opening night sticker on it,
Mm,
and it seems like the simplest thing, but it means
that's
something,
it.
you know.
How
But
many
yeah, if
how many people
you
at the
know,
Broadway flea market bought opening night gifts that actors no longer needed? It could be a
mm,
specialized item, but at a certain point you go, "Hey, I have an apartment, I don't have room for all this," and they donate it to Broadway Cares, and Broadway Cares puts it at the flea market and they sell it. People like those opening night gifts, especially if their child or they are in a production of the same show in high school or college. It becomes, now this is a gift, a
yeah,
special gift to give somebody. My cousin
mhm,
is going to be in Hairspray in college. I got an opening night gift from the Broadway show of Hairspray, or an opening night program. It's a special gift. Well, they mean something. So if you at Exile or anywhere else have those specialized things, it may take a while for it to catch on, but you got to start sometime. This idea of just saying, "You pay us money, you see a show, get the hell out of here." Uh, I don't know. Broadway has its own aura, um, but
oh
they
yeah,
like
I mean,
celebrities on Broadway. That's another
yeah,
problem.
it is the mindset of saying, "Come be a part of this conversation. Now get out into the world and tell everybody else to
Right,
come be part of this conversation.
right.
What did you give me? Am I walking away with a t-shirt or anything? Like, I'm not carrying this program everywhere to promote your show." Yes, I do understand that, and I am a fan of swag. I feel like, especially when it comes to Broadway, because I have Hamilton, pop figurines I collect, but I didn't get them from Hamilton. When I go to the theater, like, I will get a lapel pin
Hmm.
or a magnet because those are easier to just
And to
accumulate.
carry home.
Yeah, and to carry home, absolutely. And, yeah, but, if in the regional for regional theaters, like that's not always an option unless you go to Walnut. You can actually buy jewelry at Walnut
Yeah,
Street
there you
Theater.
go.
You know what? My neck just felt so naked while I was attending this show. I think I'm just gonna get that lovely one right
That
there.
is
How
unique to
much?
Walnut. I remember being there and going, "They're selling what? Who comes here? Go to Tiffany's, go somewhere else, but go to Zales. Why would you buy
Yeah.
it at the theater?"
Go to Jared.
Anyway,
Yes.
we could. The thing is, the main takeaway from all of this is you are thinking about
Mm,
what the audience would like. I think about it all the time. I know I'm not the typical audience, but that doesn't mean I don't understand my niece or
yeah.
or friends in the building that I live in who why did they choose to go to this show or that show? In New York we have too much competition. That's another reason. Now it's why would you go to see Music Man versus seeing something brand new that's like Kimberly Akimbo, which I do want to recommend to everyone. It was wonderful. Throwing that to you. I have no connection to it. Just let that be known.
Mhm.
Um, Terrible title, but it's a wonderful show. So why would you do one over the other? Obviously, stars. Obviously, you heard of it. Obviously, you don't want to throw $200 or $300 down the drain for something you aren't sure you're going to enjoy and you don't know what Kimberly Akimbo is about. Those are all reasons. So, how do we let people know? How long does it take? How much money do you have to spend? And the truth is, a lot of these smaller theaters need advertising budgets. You need to make it look like this is something everyone needs to go to. And sometimes you don't get that with a newsletter.
Yeah.
But who has money?
Yeah. So we must move on.
Thank you. Hey, see, bookends.
Move
You started
on.
with move on, you end with move on. All right.
Anything you do, let it come from
It
you.
was a very stimulating
Anything
25th
you do,
podcast. I thank you.
give us more to see. Yes. Yes, that is the 25th episode of The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnell
We
Radford.
never dealt with the smelly fish.
Oh,
Oh my God, this is a teaser for next week. We had a
yeah, I
we
guess
had
we're
a
gonna have to
whole
come back
talk lined
for
up
26.
about smelly fish. Um,
So the working title will be Rotting Fish Thinks at the Head with a question mark?
no, you're gonna have to save that for next week. You're gonna have to come up with a
No,
different
I've already
title.
said it
You're
here.
gonna, no, you said it, but you don't have to list it.
I'll have to find something else
Yes,
in
you have
here.
to use something else for a hashtag. You
It's
can,
a reject title.
yeah, yeah. No, I
It'll
mean
be a
because you
reject
don't want
title.
someone who finds that ending up at this episode. You want them at the next one.
Yeah. I'll say I don't know now. So okay, so now we have to workshop this
Yeah.
before we end.
No, I think you just go. We started. The subtitle is: We started with one idea. We ended up talking about a different one.
Yeah. Well,
Shorten that if you
so
can, please.
now it's going to be Swagtastic.
Oh God, that's not. I don't. No, that's a rejected title. I reject that.
Our working title, Swagtastic. Okay, that's a rejected title.
Okay.
Rotting Fish is a rejected title. Swagtastic
Yeah.
also.
Also,
Oh, move on.
move
Move
on.
on.
There you go.
Move on. Okay.
Yeah,
The
everyone will think
working
we're
title
talking
is
about Sunday in the Park with George,
yes.
and we're not doing that either.
It's just a callback.
Yeah.
It's a callback. Okay. But yes,
Okay.
that's The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnell
I'm
Radford,
Mitch Weiss.
and we'll see you at the theater.
Yay.
Thank you for listening Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.